All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us today, Isabella.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So go ahead and we can jump right into it. I guess we'll start with, if it's okay with you, just to kind of give everyone a little bit of background to who you are and, kind of how you got into cybersecurity in the first place. I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, well, my name is Isabella, and I'm a graduate from SUNY Plattsburgh. I graduated early, and I graduated about a year ago. Um, I got into cybersecurity because of my brother, who is great at giving me advice, and I'm great at taking it years later. But I did take the chance and I took the risk of getting into cybersecurity and listening to him. And so getting into it during college, I kind of found myself getting more into it and actually liking it and learning new things. And cybersecurity is pretty logic based, if you really think about it. And I feel like I'm a logical person, so it kind of comes a little more naturally to me than somebody who may not have that skill. But yeah, and so I've been before I landed my job, I've been looking for jobs, and I believe like I wasn't really branding myself right. And that's kind of what this program helped me do a little more. Yeah.
Awesome. So you mentioned that, thanks for giving the background. I think that's important for context. So you graduated from SUNY Plattsburgh in 2024,
2020, December 2023, so the end of the year.
December 2023. Okay, so almost 2024. And you majored in cybersecurity. And and you graduated early. So from 2024, we'll just say, to 2025, what changed in that year?
Well, I've been applying, just applying to jobs starting from my sophomore year in college, but I was just applying. I wasn't networking. I wasn't really taking my LinkedIn seriously. I wasn't doing everything I needed to do. I was just applying. And so the program actually offers some great resources like how to brand yourself on LinkedIn, how to fix it up, how to build your resume, how to build a cover letter, how to network with recruiters and hiring managers. And I think just them telling me what to do kind of made me actually do it. And that's what started to, then I started seeing change, and I started getting recruiters and hiring managers reaching out, or just jobs reaching out, getting emails about certain jobs and things like that. Yeah.
Um, so did you have any prior experience before the program because you were in college? So I'm assuming you worked while you were in college, or maybe you did like some internships. Um, how would you compare the VSOC experience versus what you were exposed to in college? Would you say it was, equal, or do you think that like, your college experience was lacking and that's why maybe it took so long because, it was a year and change before you actually, I think, got an offer. So,
I had two internships relating to cybersecurity while I was still in college. One of them was remote, the other was actually in person in a security operations type of lab that we had in our school. And so the remote one was more watching and learning, and then taking whatever we learned from what we saw, and doing what we will with it, if we want to continue learning more about what it was, or I guess leaving it in the dust. And then the one that was in person, it was a little hands-on. There was some tools we used that companies still use, but as far as like I said, as far as like branding myself on LinkedIn and stuff, it wasn't doing that for me. It was kind of a little not too organized, I would be honest. And I feel like this program was a little more organized and definitely like hold you accountable for what actions you need to take.
Right. Awesome. And so your school program, you had more like a security operations center, or yeah, I guess I would say like a center for cybersecurity. How was that experience different from the VSOC? Was it a matter of tools? Was it a matter of just, leadership? How would you compare the two?
Um, so tools, I feel like the VSOC program was a little more up to date with the tools that the the cybersecurity company and industries use. I feel like it was a little more up to date. Um, and I feel like the at school at my internship, it was like I said, it was just unorganized and kind of like dinosaur-y, where we were using old stuff and just not really learning the new cybersecurity trends and things of that nature. And we did work in teams sometimes. Sometimes you kind of just taught yourself there and learn from others if you asked questions. And it was hard balancing that too because, you know, I had classes, I had other things going on. So whatever time I took there was my time, and that's really all the time I could use being in person. I could do other stuff like on my own computer, but what the time I got there was the time I got there. So
Awesome. So you graduate in 2024, right? You do some internships along the way. Now you're out of school. Fast forward, you're out of school a year, and you still don't have a job in cyber. So I'm assuming you're working part-time, or maybe doing something else. You join the VSOC program, and within a matter of a couple weeks, what happens next?
well, after finishing the program, not even like 6 weeks after, I got an interview and I landed my job, my first full-time job, after being out of school. And so what made me join the program was, first of all, a lot of these boot camps, they are for a longer period of time and they don't really guarantee you a job. They kind of just guarantee you the skills for the job you're looking for in cybersecurity. And I feel like this VSOC program really just, it gave you both. It gave you the skills, it gave you the hands-on work, it gave you the real world experience, it gave you what to do when looking for a job, how to brand yourself, and you kind of and all in a short amount of time. And so it kind of guarantees you getting a job if you put in the work, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. And yeah, just hold you accountable.
Really, that's incredible. I appreciate you sharing that, because that's kind of like the consensus amongst a lot of folks that we speak to, because they're either entry level graduates, mid career professionals. They're in the market, so they're enrolling in these boot camps. We've had students that have gone through boot camps and that you spent 15,000 upwards of 20,000 to go through this master's degree level of education, but it's really just comprised of self-paced modules or OSINT tools, and they're not using the licenses for the paid tools that are actually being configured and deployed in the environment. And so I think that's the differentiating factor, and why you maybe experience some of the success that you have experienced and some of your colleagues is we actually have a SOC. We actually have the tools that are being used in the industry, and you're actually going to learn from engineers and analysts who are active in the field. So it's not like a theoretical lecture from an outdated professor. that hasn't touched the tools in 10, 20 years. Because in cybersecurity, let's face it, in 1 year, you can be a dinosaur because there's things constantly changing, right? The tactics, techniques, procedures are changing. They're accelerating. The technology is continuing to advance. And so, what you're using 6 months ago is not what people are using, 6 months later. So I think that that's the differentiating factor. And I think that, that in concatenation with our career services and professional development, which is partnered with the Forbes Coaches and Business Council, is stellar. And I think it's second to none. I think it's one of the most competitive programs on the market. And I think the technical aptitude and technical skills and exposure, combined with the job search strategies that we follow and the frameworks that we set forth, really set students up for success. But I want to say that kudos to you. You really took initiative. You were highly engaged. And I think that's the differentiating factor from the students, right? From the students' perspective. And I think, what I want you to talk about too is, I think when you got your job, right, I think you really started to see the impact that LinkedIn can have when you made a post about it. And that can you kind of talk about how that went?
Yeah, if I could look right now, actually, my one post from just posting that I got my job and my journey, a lot of people were inspired by, I guess, me just telling the truth about my journey. But 144,000 impressions on
Wow.
this post,
Oh my
and
God, it's
it's
incredible.
crazy. But yeah, so definitely being engaged and being engaged on the community for the program too, because we have our own community. Um, LinkedIn too. I like LinkedIn because my generation is so used to social media and scrolling and all this stuff, and it's not really information that's useful for at least your career. And so I like LinkedIn because I could leverage it to like it's kind of like the same act of scrolling on Instagram, but instead you're learning stuff, you're engaging with like a community that's towards what you're going for. And like I there's a lot of tips and tricks people share to even job searching or just using certain cybersecurity tools, keeping updated with certain security trends and things of that nature. And also I like how interactive we were on, our meetings. I feel like everybody was very interactive, and the analysts as well being interactive with us, and just everyone just supporting each other, and just we're all trying to get to the same point, and we're all in it with each other. And I think that that was a great community. It's not like we're strangers. It felt more like we're family. We're all reaching the same goal. So that's the difference between this community and a boot camp community.
Wow, that's incredible. I appreciate you sharing that. And so, just to kind of tie it all together and bring this thing home, what advice do you have for future students? Maybe someone who's in college, not getting, the type of traction that they're looking for. They're an entry level, professional college graduate, or someone who's a mid-career professional looking for a career change. Like, what advice do you have for, let's say, future students? What would you say to someone with no experience who's considering, joining our program, but is, unsure if it's right for them or if they can succeed in this space?
Well, I've from my posts, I've been getting a lot of what should I do? How do I go about this? And I've been recommending this program because it's not too long, it's affordable, it's very it provides a lot of resources that are valuable to your future. And I would say, go for it. And the only way it's gonna work is if you actually put in the work. That's that's my biggest advice. Taken from somebody who says stuff and sometimes doesn't do it. This is what I really mean. You gotta take it and you actually have to put in the work, because you can't expect results if you're just watching and listening and not doing anything about it. You actually got to put in the work.
That's real. I respect that because that's raw and that's uncut and it's true. And I lied. I have one more question that I have on my list here, that I do want to ask you because I think it's important. I think it kind of drives the point home. Um, when you were speaking to recruiters, and I know you got the job offer, and I think you had some other traction too with other folks that were interested in you, but they were too late. You already signed the deal. You signed an offer. But when you were speaking to recruiters and hiring managers, what were they saying about the VSOC experience on your resume? Was this something that they were like impressed with? Was it something they glanced by? How did they react to the VSOC experience on your resume compared to the job description that they were hiring for? I want you to talk a little bit about that.
Well, I would say for my job that I interviewed for, that experience definitely stood out to them. Like it kind of basically gave me the job or got me the job because I had the experience and they weren't even really looking for people with full, 5 years of experience. But because I had the experience with CrowdStrike and QRadar, they kind of were like, oh, this girl, she already had her hands-on experience, regardless if it was a program or not, regardless if it was a full-time or not, because I would get asked that, like, what was this a full-time job, it's a part-time job? And I would tell them it's a program. And I would also tell them that it's definitely benefited me for the better. So that's what I have to say about that.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing your experience. We're super, proud of you for all of your work and your growth. And, we're looking forward to all the great things that you're going to continue to do in our community and then in the bigger cyberspace community, because obviously, it's everyone's responsibility to improve the cyber hygiene in their, immediate surrounding communities and online. So we're excited to watch your growth. We're excited to see you do great things. And we're hopefully going to continue to stay in touch, and you'll be a resource for, more students to come, because that's what this is all about: lifting as we climb, moving forward together, and showing the world, especially those who need this skill most, that you can secure your freedom and your future in cyberspace. So thank
I
you.
also want to say, I was considering certifications and things of that nature, but this program really tied it all together, and I didn't even need to not waste my time because you can learn skills and stuff like that, but definitely made things a little bit more easier for me than having to sit there and study for hours, a huge textbook to get a certification that you may or may not get a job with. I
Right.
think that is something that really stood out to me too. And yeah, proud of myself. And this is just the beginning. Just the
That's
beginning.
right. That's right. Hey, I'm good. I'm clapping it up for you. So we're really excited for you. I know you're the client, the company that you're working for is, what is the name of the client that you're going to be working for, and what's the role?
Your name and beginning of your last name, William Sonoma. Um, and I will be a incident and response analyst. That was my role,
Awesome.
full
Awesome.
time.
Best of luck. Best of luck. You're going to enjoy New York City. You have the Big Apple to explore. Tons of happy hours in the borough. I think you're in Brooklyn. So enjoy, be safe. And again, we're looking forward to seeing you do all these great things. So thank you so much, Isabella.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right.